Hello coding aliens, welcome back to my YouTube channel Code with Aki. So in this video we are going to build the Quora clone, a full stack Quora. This video is in the continuation of the previous build, the part 1 of the Quora clone. If you have not watched the part 1 of the Quora clone, we will throw the link in the description. You guys will go and check out the link for the part 1 of this build. So in this build we will only we will only cover the concept of Redux and the state management activity that we are going to do here. We will also cover the Google authentication and Firebase configuration, okay, and all the backend stuff in this build. So are you guys excited for this build or this part? Let me know in the comments below. Or if you have not subscribed this YouTube channel yet, make sure to subscribe this YouTube channel and press the bell icon for more update or for more videos just like this. Okay, so let's go and add all the features of this. Okay, so we have already created the user interface, a UI of the Quora in the previous build and first part. Okay, in this part I will simply add the Redux stuff and all the backend functionalities here. So to prior to do any coding here, I will simply grab the config file or the config snippet from the Firebase. So how we will do this? You guys have to simply open the tab here, or inside of this tab you guys have to simply fire the command here, or you guys have to simply search for the Firebase console.firebase console.firebase.google.com, and here we have already okay, so we have already configured the Firebase application or the Firebase configuration for our build here. Okay, so you guys can see here we have already added a project of Quora clone here. You guys will see on the screen here, and the only step, we have successfully registered our application here. We have successfully registered everything here. You guys can see here we have this Quora clone, the previous Quora clone here. You guys can see here. Okay, so we have this Quora clone, another Quora clone. I think we have this Quora, right? So here you guys can see here we have this. So first of all, you guys have to simply create or register our application. So how we will register this? Simply go here and give the name here, Quora clone Aki. Okay, or nothing like this. Simply give Quora clone. If you guys want the Firebase hosting, so enable the Firebase hosting. Simply click on the register application. Now it will register your application here. Fine. Now simply click on the next and the next here. So click on this continue to console here. Okay, fine. Next, you guys can see here we have registered our application here. Simply click on the settings option here, and inside of this setting you guys can see we have a config here. So simply click on this config. We will use this config in our project here. Okay, so I will simply copy here. So simply click on this copy option. Now open the sidebar here. Now you can see here we have this authentication. So we will enable the authentication here. So I think I have successfully enabled the authentication. You guys can see here we have this Google authentication here and the email and password authentication here. Now click on this Cloud Firestore. Okay, so here you will see we have already initialized or simply already registered for the Firestore here. Okay, if you have not registered there, simply follow my first part of this Quora clone. You will get all these things to know from there. Okay, so we have successfully registered our project here. Now it's time to do the real coding here. So I'm going to simply minimize this. Okay, now inside of this source directory here. Okay, and I will add another I will add another file with the name of firebase.js. Hit the enter button here. Okay, so inside of this we will simply paste this what we have copied from the Firebase console here. So simply paste down this, and here if you guys remember that in the first part we have already installed all the dependencies that we are going to use in the project here. So simply you guys go and check out from the package.json. you guys can see here we have this course, icon, react DOM, react model, and these things. Now we will install a Firebase also here, so to use all the Firebase features here. So how we will do this? So simply open the terminal here, and inside this terminal you guys have to simply fire the command npm install Firebase, so that it will install the dependencies for the Firebase. After that we will use all the Firebase services inside our build. So simply fire the command npm install or I Firebase and hit the enter button. Okay, give it some time. It will install all the Firebase dependencies here to the project, and after that you are able to use any Firebase services. Got it? As you guys can see here, we have installed the Firebase. Okay, now it's time to do the user authentication. So how we will do this? So simply first of all you have to initialize the Firebase application. So simply how we will do this? So first of all import the Firebase from the Firebase. So we will import the Firebase just like this. So Firebase from Firebase. Here I here make a Firebase. I will simply create an object for the Firebase app. So we have this Firebase app, and here we will use Firebase.initialize app. Okay, so initialize app, and simply grab this Firebase config and simply paste it down. So copy this and paste it down here just like this. Got it? So we have this Firebase, and here we have this Firebase config, and we have passed this. Now we will enable the authorization. So simply we will enable the authorization. So Firebase.auth for authorizing. Next we will add the provider. So where we have a Google Auth provider. So how we will do this? Simply create an object for this. So simply add a new Firebase.auth.Google Auth provider. Okay, just like this. So here you will simply add the provider inside your application here. Okay, and then last step to enable the backend, that the database. So for this I will simply create another object for the database here. So const db and Firebase app dot firestore. Okay, so it will simply give us a real-time cloud store and store read or write request from there. Okay, so we are done with this. Now it's time to simply export all these things. So simply how we will export this? So simply export the auth and provider just like this, and another simply export the db export default and db just like this. Got it? So we have successfully add the config or Firebase config here inside our project here. Now we are now good to go to use the Firebase inside our build. Now save this Firebase.js. Let's go back to your features here. Now it's time to simply add authentication or creating the user state here. So how we will create the user? So simply I will simply grab this counter and counter module.css and simply delete both of these files from I will, because we are not going to use this. Okay, so inside of this counter slice, first of all let's rename this. I'm going to simply make it bigger now, so you guys can simply clearly see. Okay, I'm going to simply minimize this and make it bigger just like this. Okay, so you guys can see here we have this counter slice. So grab this counter slice, put it in the source directory. Now delete the counter folder as you guys can see here, and simply bring this counter slice inside the features. Okay, so here we have this counter slice. Simply rename this counter slice because we are going to create the user state. So that for this you will simply give the name here a user slice.js. Fine. So now we have this user slice, and next you simply have to rename the counter to the user. So we have this user slice here, and here we will give the name here user. Okay, so initial state, for the initial state the user will be null, so I will simply set the value here null. Okay, so in the reducers we will have two options, one for login and another for logout. So here for the increment I will simply add a login reducer here, and login have a state and the action also. Okay, so I will simply wrap it inside a parenthesis here, so a state and the action here, and simply grab this comment section. Okay, so we have this user dot state dot user, and the value for the user is like action dot payload. So it will simply have a bunch of information of the user when the user will be authenticated. Okay, so next we have this login, and after this we have this logout here. So here we have this logout, so we have this logout reducer, and on logout we will simply set the user to the null, back to the null when the user will be logout, just like this. Grab this increment by amount, simply delete this. Now it's time to simply export all these things here. So we have this login and logout, so simply grab these things here and add here all the name of the reducer. So we have this logout, we have this login, okay, and we have this counter slice, not counter slice, we will have this user slice dot action. Got it? Then remove this section also here. Okay, so we have this. Next, remove this section also. So here we will simply create a select user hook where these things will simply see, these things will be simply used from here. So we will simply export it like a select user, and we have this state here, and here state will be state dot user dot, instead of this value we will have this user, and we will have the payload of the users. So the payload will contain the name, unique ID, display name, photo URL, and a bunch of things here. Okay, and then last we have simply export the user slice here. Okay, so we have successfully created the user state. As you guys can see here, we have this user slice. We'll simply create the slice with the name of user. Initial state will be of user will be null. We will have the two functions for the user. One is login and another is logout. For the login, if there will be a login, then we will simply dispatch the payload here. So payload will contain all the information about the user here. Okay, after that we will have the logout here. So for the logout, you guys can see here, we will simply set the user state to the null, and we have simply export the login and the logout. Okay, after the user slice dot actions, and we have this select user which have all the information of the user after the successful login, and after that we have successfully export the reducers here, user slice dot reducer here. Now it's time to simply go back to your app folder. As you guys can see here, we have this app at the very top of here, and inside of this app we will have this store. So inside of this store, you guys have to simply remove this counter reducer and make it a user reducer, just like this. And here simply grab this okay, now simply grab this counter, and instead of this counter we have this user slice. Okay, and here instead of this counter simply rename this user, and here also user. So we have this store, and it will simply store the information for the user in the runtime here. So simply save this and save this user slice also. So we have successfully created the user state, and now how we will imply these things inside our build. So let's go back to your app.js, and here you guys can see here we have this Quora. So now we will simply create an object of user here. So simply create an object for the user, and here we will use a useSelector. We will simply import this from the React Redux. So simply import the useSelector from React Redux, and here you will simply pass the select user, and here we will have a bunch of information for the user here. So simply hit the enter button here, so it is automatically imported from the features here. Now we have this select user and we have this user here. Okay, so here we will add a condition here. So we will have the conditional rendering here. So how we will do this? So if there is a user, so if there is a user means if we have the user state, then we will, okay, I will add a ternary operator here. So if there will be a user, then render the Quora component. Okay, if there is a user, then render the Quora component, else render the login component. So we have to simply create a login component here also. So simply we here go back inside of this component, make another folder. So I'm going to simply make another folder of the auth, and inside of this auth we will create a login.js and login.css. okay, so we have this login.js inside of this, and we'll create a login.css. fine, so we have this login.js, and now I'm going to simply create a functional component for this. So here I will simply do a testing purpose here. So simply here give a class name of login, just like this, and hello from login, just like this. Got it? Now save this, import the login.css file here also. So I'm going to simply import the login.css. so we have this login.css. now save this, go back to your app.js, and here simply import the login component from the auth login. Got it? So we have this login component, and when you will save this, you will be thrown, if you open the deployed version of here. Okay, so if you guys can see here, we are in the Quora component here. When we will refresh this, you will be thrown to the login page here. So I'm going to simply refresh this page. Okay, so I have refreshed this page. Now you guys can see here we are back to the login page here, and we have successfully created the user state using the Redux here. So this is only happened because we have created the user state, and initially the user state is null. So that's why we are back to the login page here. So now it's time to do or create the login component here. So you guys can see here we have this full-fledged login component that is exactly the same login page of the Quora. If you guys have not checked the login page of the Quora, then you guys can simply check the login page of the Quora.com. okay, so you will get these things here from there. So now it's time, my target is to create this component here. So I will simply going to create this component. Okay, so you guys can see here we have a Quora here with the all these images, and we have all the users for the login and the register and the button, all these things. So first of all we will create the UI here. So let's go back to your app.login.js, and here inside of this login.js I will going to simply do the following stuff here. Okay, so I will simply cut and paste the code here. If you guys want this exact coding of this login component, you guys will simply get the source code for which the link I have given in the description. Okay, so I'm going to simply paste the code of the login component here to focus only on the Redux and the backend stuff. So okay, so I'm going to do the following things here. So guys, we have this login here. Okay, so I have only cut and copy paste the code here. You guys will get the exact code from my GitHub repository. I will simply drop the link of my GitHub repository inside this description of this video, or you guys can simply check out that the repository from there, and you will get the exact code of here. So we have this. I'm going to simply scroll it from the top to the bottom to get you the exact essence that what we are going to do here. So you guys can see here we have this login here. Okay, you guys can see we have this a p tag for the continue with the Google, continue with Facebook, sign up with the email and the password, terms of services, and everything here. You will get each and everything here. Okay, I'm going to simply show you the CSS file also here. You guys can see here we have done a lot of CSS here, so it will take a lot of time. Okay, so that's why we have only paste, cut and copy paste the code here from my GitHub repository. Okay, so you guys can see here we have all the codes here. So I'm going to simply scroll it from the top and down, top to down, see show you the exact coding here. If you guys make simply pause the screen, and simply if you do the coding, simply pause the screen and do the coding just like this. Okay, fine. Okay, so we are done with this here. Okay, so now I will go and simply save this, and I'm going to simply save the CSS also here. Okay, so now here you guys can see here, instead of this hello from login, you will get the exact login page of the Quora that in the deployed version. As you guys can see here, this is the active link that I have hosted it live on the Firebase. Okay, now you guys can see here, I'm going to simply refresh this page here. I think it is still compiling, so that's why it is not showing here. So I'm going to simply see. Okay, so as you guys can see, it is still compiling here. Okay, it has compiled successfully. Got it. I'm going to simply remove this here. Okay, so we have the same Quora here. As you guys can see here, we have the same thing here. Okay, so we are done with this login component and all the CSS stuff. Now it's time to add or simply authenticates the user. Okay, and do the real coding here. So here we will create the state for the user first of all. So here as you guys can see here, we have this login here from the email and the password. So how we will add this? So for this I'm going to simply create a user state, or simply we will create a two custom hook here. So I'm going to simply create the custom hook just like this. So pay attention here. As you guys can see here, we have this input statement here for the email here. You guys can see here, we have this input statement for the email. So for the email, how we will add the I will create this custom hook here. So we will simply create the email, const email, and set email. Okay, so initially it will be null, so we will simply use useState, and here we will simply pass an empty string here. So it will be initially it will be null. Next we have this password here. So for this password we will simply set the password and simply set the password just like this. Both of the field input field will be initially will be null. Okay, now it's time to simply set the email and the password. So let's go back to your back to the email or the email and the password section. So you guys can see we have this input field for the email and we have this input field for the password. So for the input field of the email, I will simply add a value. So for the value we will simply pass the email here. Okay, and for on change we'll add the property of on change. So for this on change here will here an arrow function will be called, and we will simply set the email just like this. So simply set the email. On here we will pass an object, event object here. So e dot target dot value. Fine. So now it will simply set the value of the email that the user has passed here. Okay, and the same thing we will do this same thing for the password here. So for this password here, I'm going to simply add this thing. So for the value, instead of this email, we will simply give the value for the password. Fine. And here on change we will simply set the password here. So simply set the password. Fine. So we have simply add these things here. Okay, so we have created or simply set the email and the password for the user. Now it's time to add the functionality on the buttons here. So as you guys can see here, we have this login button and we have this registered button. So for this login button we will simply as you guys can see here, we have this login button here. So for this login button we will simply add the type of submit. So simply add the submit. Okay, so it will simply fired when we hit the enter button. Okay, so here for the submit here we will simply add a functionality of on click. So on click there will be a function called handle login. So I will simply create a function for the handle login here just like this. So we have this function for the handle login, and on submit, here we will simply add another on click properties for on the button here. So for this register, we will simply create a function for handle register. Fine. So we have this handle login function and the handle register function, and both the function we will simply grab this both of the function here, and we will simply call both of the function or define the function at the very top of here. So here we have this handle login. So handle login, I will simply make an arrow function here. So for the login here, we will simply create the okay, so simply we will authenticate the user here, or simply pass the user with set the user state here. So we have this auth dot on you guys can see here, if you first register the user, you guys will simply pass here auth dot create user with email ID. But when you will log in the user, you have to simply call a function sign in with login, just like this, sign in with email and the password. As you guys can see, we have this sign in with email and password. Okay, so here we have this sign in with email and password, and after that you guys have to simply pass here pass the email and the password, the user that is passed here. So we have this email and the password here. Okay, so we will simply create it is a callback function. So then we have then here. Okay, so here inside of this then we will have to simply authenticate the user. So I will simply create an object for the auth here, and here we'll create an arrow function here, and inside of this we will simply console out the user. So how we will do this? So simply add the console.log, and here we will add simply auth here, just like this. Okay, and here it will simply throw an error. So to catch this error, so we will simply add another function for the catch, and here for the catch we'll simply catch the error message. So e dot, so simply we will alert the user. So simply alert, inside of this alert e dot message, just like this. So this is the way how we will do this for the handle login. And here when we will log in, so to disable all the browser enabled actions here, so simply we will add this prevent default for auto refreshing of the page. So we will add the e dot prevent default, and we will simply pass the event and object of e, just like this. So we have this handle login here. Okay, so now we will create another function for the handle register. So how we will do this? So simply here instead of this handle login, add here a handle register. So we have this handle register, and here we, instead of this sign in with email and the password, we will simply add call a function of create user with email and password. Okay, so if user wants to authenticate itself with email and password, provided email and password, then it will have the options for this. Okay, so if the user wants to authenticate with the Google, then there is no need to provide the password here. So here we will simply create a user with the email and the password here. So we have this auth.create user with email and the password, and we have passed the email and the password here. After that we will authenticate the user here. So we have simply added the authenticate user authentication here. Okay, so we have these things. Okay, so instead of this here I will simply authenticate the user. So how we will do this? So if there will be a auth, so then we will simply console out the user. So when we have the user, then console out the user, and there we have simply add a catch statement here for any error or any fallback appear here. So we have added both of the functionality here. Now it's time to simply check these things here. So how we will do this? So I'm going to simply save this. Okay, go back to here I will simply add a email of aki dot, okay, it is aki@gmail.com, and instead of this password I will simply add a password here. Okay, so I'm going to simply register here. So when we will click on this register, you guys will see we have successfully created the user with the provided email and the password. Okay, so it is not making it is not, you guys can see the field for the email and the password has not been resetted because here we have not added that things here. So here you guys can see here we have this e.prevent default here, and after this you guys have to simply set both of these things so to the empty. So how we'll do this? So here inside of this handle register, here inside of this simply set password to the null or simply empty here, and in the same way set email to an empty array. Okay, so now save this, save this, grab the same thing and put it inside of this catch statement after the catch statement. So now save this. Okay, so we have this. When I will click again on the register, you will see there will be an error message. Okay, you guys can see here we have this error message says that the email and the password is already used by the another account, because initially you guys can see here we have already clicked on the registered. So that's why once the user is been registered, then user cannot register with that email or the password here. So that's why it is showing the error in the alert message here. Okay, so I'm going to simply click on here. Okay, I'm going to simply log in with that. So here I will simply add another add the same Gmail, and here we will add the password here, and I'm going to simply log in here. So here we have clicked on the login, but this thing is not changed, or we are not thrown to the next landing page of the Quora because we have not authenticated the user yet. So that's why it is not showing. So I'm going to simply show you the console here. So we have already logged in the user. We have successfully created the user. As you guys can see here in the console, here we have an object here. So I'm going to simply make it bigger here. Okay, so you guys will see inside of this console we have this operation of this. Now you guys can see here we have this user. Okay, so inside of this user I'm going to simply make it, scroll it down here. So you will see here we have this email. Okay, you guys can see here we have this email and all the bunch of stuffs here. You guys can see here we have a bunch of information of the user. You guys can see here we have the last login, sign in time, the creation time of the user. Okay, we don't have this photo URL because we have the user have not passed the photo here. We have this unique ID here. Okay, so we have all the bunch of information here when the user is successfully logged in here. Okay, so now it's time to add the functionality for the Google authentication. So how we will do this? So simply it is a very simple step. So you guys have to simply add a bunch of things here. So here you guys can see here continue. Okay, so you guys can see here we have this continue with Google. So I'm going to simply add a on click functionality here. So on click I will simply create a function of a sign in, and I'm going to simply call the function at the top here. Okay, so here on we have this sign in function. So here on sign in, so I will simply create okay, not like this. So I will simply create a arrow function here just like this. So here we have this sign in. So we will simply sign in the user with an pop-up. So simply you guys can see here we have this. So auth dot sign in with pop-up. You guys can see here we have this sign in with pop-up. Simply click on this, and inside of this pop-up we will simply provide the provider. So we have this Google provider. So we have simply passed the provider that we have created an object inside of the Firebase earlier here. So we have this provider here. Okay, so we have this provider here, sign in with pop-up, and we have this we have given pass the provider here. Okay, so when there will be any error, so simply catch that error and simply alert the user with the respective error. So how we will do this? So simply add a function of alert, and inside of this alert simply pass the e.message. Okay, just like this. Now save this. We have created this thing here. Okay, so when you will click on this continue with Google, there will be a pop-up open, and it will ask you from which Google account you guys want to log in here. So I'm going to simply click on this. So you guys can see it. See here we have this pop-up here. It is asking us about from which Google account you are guys going to simply log in from here. So I'm going to simply click on last option here. So when we will click on this, so it authenticates the user. Okay, so user is authenticated. Okay, so how we will check this? So simply, okay, I have click on the inspect, but we have not console out the information, so that's why it will not. Okay, you guys can see we have this object here. Okay, so it is automatically throw the user inside of this console here. You guys can see here inside of this console we have aki.gmail. Okay, I think this is the previous one. Okay, so user is not okay, I think we have not consoled out the user, so that's why it is not showing. How we will do this? So simply inside of this simply add a statement of console dot log dot auth here, just like this. Now save this. Okay, go back to your simply go back, or simply click on here, and here inside of this console you will see the information of the user. I'm going to simply click with login with another Gmail here. So simply I will simply now click on the console here. Okay, so inside of this you guys can see here we have the user here with now you guys can see here we have a bunch of information here for the user. You guys can see, so inside of this we have a user here. So I'm going to simply maximize this. So inside of this you guys can see here we have this unique ID here. Okay, you guys can see here we have this secure token here. We have this current user with the name here, default these things here. So I'm going to simply make it somehow bigger here. Okay, so we have these things here. Okay, so next it's time to simply authenticate the user. So how we will do this? So I'm going to simply minimize this. Okay, so we have successfully authenticated the user with all the following options here. I'm not going to simply show you the how we will authenticate the user. I will give you a task for you guys to authenticate the user with the help of Facebook here. Okay, so you guys can simply do it the same way in the Google, just like a Google. You guys have to simply change the same thing in the Firebase.js, and here instead of this Google auth provider you guys have to simply ask the Facebook provider. So that's why so after that you guys will have a pop-up for the Facebook, and it will simply authenticates the user from the Facebook here. So fine. Next let's go back to your app.js. Inside of this app.js here you will simply authenticate the user. So how will authenticate the user here? So inside of this here we will use a dispatch functionality or useDispatch hook here to dispatch all the information of the user, and from that we will simply log the console out the information of the logged in user. So I'm going to simply create an object for the useDispatch here. So we have this object for the dispatcher, and we will simply make this object, or simply create this object and import it from the React Redux useDispatcher. And here after this you guys will see here after this we will use an useEffect hook. So it will run once in a life cycle of this React. Okay, and it will simply have a dependencies. Okay, so when there will be a change in the dependency, then it will run. So it is a mixture of component will mount, did mount, okay, or component will update here. So it is the mixture of all the life cycle of the React. Okay, so we have this useEffect. So first of all you import the useEffect from the React. So here we have this useEffect. Okay, so inside of this useEffect we will authenticates the user. So we have this auth, so simply import the auth from the Firebase. Auth dot on auth changed means on the user, on means when we have different user. So when we have this auth change, I will simply create an object for the auth user here, just like this, and create an arrow function here, just like this. So inside of this, if we have a user, means if we have authenticates the user here, so simply we will dispatch a bunch of information here. So we will simply dispatch the login. So we will simply dispatch the login. So how we will dispatch this? So we will simply dispatch the login login reducer. So we have this login, so import the login from the user slice. Okay, so we will simply dispatch the login, and here inside of this login we will dispatch the bunch of information here. Okay, so here I think import the useEffect here. So I think I am going to simply manually import the useEffect, not user effect, useEffect. Okay, so here we will simply dispatch the login here. Okay, so here on dispatching the information of the user, I will simply I'm going to simply log out the information of the user, and we will simply show you the and the bunch of information of the user here. So here you guys can see we have this dispatch login here. Okay, and if the user is not if the user is not authorized, or there will be a malicious user, so then we will simply dispatch the logout reducer. So here inside of this dispatch I will simply pass the logout. So logout reducer, and simply import the logout from the user slices like this. Okay, so here inside of this useEffect we will simply console dot log, and we will simply pass the auth user for the bunch of information. As you guys can see, we have this. So grab this thing and put it inside this if statement. Okay, fine. Now save this. Okay, I think here you guys have to simply pass the dependencies here. So here inside of the for the dependencies, how we will simply do this? So inside of this dependencies we have auth user. So simply inside of this dependency it will depend on this dispatch here. So simply pass here dispatch. So then when there will be a change, any change in the dispatch, means when there will be a different user, simply dispatch that information for that respective user. Okay, so we have these things here. I'm going to simply save this. You guys will see here, you guys can see here we have back to our landing page here, because we have authenticates the user. Okay, so my motive is to show you the information of the user that we have dispatched here. So how we will do this? So I'm going to simply show you the information inside of this console. So I'm going to simply, okay, you guys can see here we have these things here. So it is calling infinite time, because we have not passed the dispatch here. So that's why it is calling here. Now it's time. Now you guys can see here you guys can see this is because we have not passed the dispatch. So that's why it is called for the bunch of times here. Okay, so let's open this one more time. So this is that is why it is very important to check all these all the respective things here. So we have not passed the dependencies here dispatch here, so that's why it is showing you for the bunch of times here. Okay, so you guys can see here we have all the information of the user here. We have this unique ID for the user. We have this last sign-in time. You guys can see here sign-in time. Okay, I'm going to simply maximize this so you guys will see it clearly on your screen. You guys can see here we have the display name, we have this email here, we have this verification of the email here. Okay, we have a secure token that is generated with the version 1 here. Okay, we have the secure token for the session ID, we have the session ID, we have all the metadata here. Okay, we have this ID here. So we have a bunch of information for the user here. Okay, after the successful login, so now it's time to simply dispatch the respective those information that we are going to use in this build. So we will dispatch the information that we are going to use here. So we will simply dispatch the UID, that is unique ID of the user. So simply dispatch the UID here. We'll simply use the photo, get the photo of the user. So simply here for the photo we will pass the user.photo URL. Okay, we will simply use the display name of the user. So simply display name for the auth user.display name. So simply pass the display name, and we will use the email for the user. So for the email here we will use display auth user.email, just like this. So we will use these things here. So we will use UID photo display name. So give a display name here. Okay, and we will use a email here. Okay, so we have these things and we have dispatched these things here. Okay, now I will show you how you can add these things here. So it's time to go back to your, as you guys can see, we have this avatar, and now we will simply update this avatar with the user that is login from here. So how we will do this? So here, for instead of this, I will simply go back to your Quora header class. So we have this Quora header. I think we have this navbar. I think we have this navbar.js. Inside of this navbar we will simply use this thing. So how we will do this? So here inside of this navbar, simply create an object for the user. I will simply create the object for the user. So const user useSelector, and useSelector, simply import it from the React Redux. So inside of this useSelector, simply pass the select user. So select user, it will have a payload, and payload have all the information of UID and everything here. So we have this useSelector here. Now instead of this source, as you guys can see here, we have this avatar. Okay, so grab the avatar. So you guys can see we have this avatar, and inside of this avatar we will simply pass the source here. So for this source we will give a user.photo. This is that simple here. Okay, so when you will simply add these things here, now you will see the photo of the user. I think user.photo. Let's refresh this. Okay, I think there will be some error. So let's find out the exact error. Okay, console failed to load. Okay, the server is 403 authorization error. Okay, so I will do I'm going to simply add the logout functionality first of all. So I will simply add the logout functionality. So how we will do this? So here you guys can see here we have this source here. So instead of this I will simply add a click, and here we will simply log out the user. So how we will simply do this? So simply we have this auth.logout sign out function here. So simply import the auth from the Firebase. So here, now save this. When we will click on this avatar, you will simply logged out here. So I will click here. So you guys can see we have logged out here. Okay, so now I'm going to simply log in here with the Google here. So simply log in here. Okay, it will ask us about from which Gmail account you are guys going to log in here. So I'm going to simply log in with another Gmail account here. Okay, I think we have these things here. Okay, you guys can see here it is showing the profile image, or the Google image that of your Gmail, that if you have passed your added your photo on the Gmail. So there you guys can see here, if the if there will be no image, then it will take first name of your name first letter of your name as like this here. Okay, so now it's time to simply add a image here and the username here. So how we will do this? So simply go back to your Q box, Quora box here, and here inside of this source we will simply pass the source here. So for the source we will simply pass the source here, user dot photo. So to use this, so first of all you have to simply create an object for the user. So simply create an object for the user and select useSelector, import it from useSelector, import it from the React and Redux, and inside of this simply pass select user. Okay, just file like this. Now save this. Okay, now not photo, it is photo. Okay, now save this. You will see the image is updated here. Now you can see we have this username. So for this username, get rid of this hard-coded name here. Simply pass the user dot display name. Now save this. You will see the name of the user here, the single click info, the Google account name here. Okay, so we have this, we have added this thing here. Okay, now it's time to simply add the question. Okay, so here we will use the concept of react modal. So how the react modal will work here? So when we will click on this, there will be a pop-up open. Okay, and inside of this pop-up you guys have to simply pass your question. You guys have to simply add your question and the link for any image. Okay, so we will add a react modal feature here. So how we will do this? So simply go back to your navbar.js. Okay, so here we have